What's going on? It's Donny Slater. Welcome to the Work Podcast, an honest podcast for people who work in the music industry that actually do the work for people who want to work in the music industry. I've got my co-host here, Mike Pelchinsky, who works at a bunch of different companies, low key, but VP of Rostrum Records and also Chief Strategy Officer at Voice Swap AI. I've got my lovely co-host, Melanie, who works at a few companies that we can't name, but trust and believe she knows what the fuck she's doing. And we have our guest host here, my brother, a really good friend of mine, Jordi Ross, founder of Animal House and just overall culture creator. So yeah, let's get into it. We were gonna talk about a lot of other shit. Now that I got the intro over, I feel like I can actually talk again. We were gonna talk about a bunch of other shit, but we felt like it made more sense to talk about you, bro, and get an audience context on just like who you are, why you're here, and how what you do ties into a lot of the topics that we're gonna get into. So I'd love for you to get some context, and then we're going to ask a shit ton of questions because it's stuff I know that I would love for you to talk about. But tell us some of your story, bro.
Cool, man. Well, thanks for having me, first of all. So, it's always a pleasure to be invited to come talk some shit. So,
For the show.
I'm sober today, so it's probably going to be light. But yeah, man, founder, CEO of Animal House. We do a variety of entertainment, music, consulting work in the music space. Particularly myself, I like to value artist development through a variety of different elements. But, as we're probably going to get into, nightlife, entertainment, building moments has always been a thing for our brand. Community building, really trying to shift the culture. And we'll probably get into Third Shift, which is our party series.
Yeah, we're going to get into all of it.
But yeah, man, that's a little bit of an intro. You want to pry a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, shit, just to give some context to anybody that's coming from my network, I started as a video director. I shot a video for Fat Man Key called Tighten Up. It did some cool little stuff. So I met Key Henderson, who was managing Fat Man Key, and she was like, yo, we're going to go on the road. What do you need? And I think I was like 19 at the time, so I was doing this shit for like honey buns. I think I told them straight up, like, if you give me food and a place to stay, I just hit the road. So they wound up going on a Thanksgiving tour that Jordi's team produced. How many cities was it? Like 8 or?
I was just 5.
5 cities. Through Animal House. It was a Thanksgiving tour. And the opening act was this little known artist that was Key's homeboy named 21 Savage. And he had one song called Picky. When Nick Knight picked us up, he picked me up from the West End. We went and picked 21 up. We picked Key up. We picked Man up. And I remember when we picked 21 up, that was the first time I seen a nigga with a tattoo.
Facts.
Like on his face and shit. And I was like, oh, this nigga is crazy. Like, and he got in the car and he was like, what up? Just like that. Literally, everybody got a car. Key was joking, and Key don't care about none of the street shit. So Key like, what up? Hey, hey Donny, hold these handies down real quick. And he like, hey, little man, that's what they call 21. They like, hey, little man, do this. And he's like, nah, nigga. Like all that shit that he portrays is like really how bro was acting on tour. But that was the first time I think all of us, 21 included, saw like people buy tickets to see like blog era rappers. Like Key was a blog era rapper. Future was a fan of him. Wiz Khalifa was a fan of him. But that was the first time that we were like, oh shit, this nigga can sell tickets in Ohio. He can sell tickets in Philly. Like it's 100, 200 kids that really pay their hard-earned money to see this motherfucker do. Bitch, you guessed it. Just all this. Just say hello 5 times on a mic and people just say it back. So that's some super important context. And that was like 10 years ago?
Yeah, I was telling bro we met like 10, almost 10. No, it was
It's longer, right?
It was more than 10 years, but
I
was gonna say we kind of really tapped in maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah, we tapped in after that because we got
that tour
reconnected
was like
too.
2015, 2015, I think the tour was 2015. Yeah, so yeah.
And then we reconnected again through Colby.
Yo.
That's how we reconnected again. Yep. So yeah, for my audience, man, that's just some context on shit that I feel like bro don't brag about enough, but like it's like arguably I feel like y'all really put the shit together that gave 21 his first audience. And I know from being in the car with him, that for a fact was the first time that he came back to Atlanta ready to rap. And he said this shit on, I've seen him talk about it too. Like, I was there to see, like, that was the first time he was like, this nigga Key getting money like this? I know this nigga, like, all right, if Key get into it, then let me go make this mixtape and put out Slaughter tape and really go make it.
Yeah, and I remember Keysandra saying that, 21 was taking a completely different approach to the whole shit, which is always a pleasure as managers, right? Like, you want someone who sees the value and really wants to go after it, and obviously we see this, the success that he's having. So, yeah, man, that was a special moment. It's funny you say that thing about just seeing blog era rappers get booked because Key was probably, I started booking shows in like 2011. So Key was he was maybe like my 5th or 6th artist that we booked. But we started booking artists at a spot called Scully's in Ohio. It's like 500 cap room. But the way we booked our brand and our name was, booking all the artists who are super huge now, the Kendrick Lamars, the Uzi Verts, the Post Malones, the Luckies, 21 Savage. We brought him back as he was, blowing up. Key's been in Ohio like 3 or 4 times with us. So, that was really our sweet spot, was that blog era, taking it from the blogs and making it real. And then also doing it in a market where a lot of, no one else was doing that in our market, you know what I mean? And then it wasn't a lot of curators or tastemakers in the space doing it at all for real. So, just a little bit more context and how we built Animal House.
Yeah, I don't know if it's the drink or if it's just where my mind went. We did a whole pre-production call yesterday, and it's hitting me now as we talking, like, and the way I'm about to say this shit on camera, it's gonna sound so staged, like I really planned it. But like, just thinking about it, I'm like, damn, bro, people really don't do that. Like, we really don't have. Like, I feel like if I was 30, I'm 32. I feel like if I was 32 and I knew about Animal House, that would have been where I went to go understand what the culture is doing. It's a few crews. I like No Strings, which is Issa and Henry. Like, I fuck with them a lot. It's some like young people putting shit together to some extent, but like, you put a whole tour together. Like, I don't really know who's like where I can go see like an AJ Radico tour right now, like, or just shit like that.
Well, I know for me, what made me pivot out of that space was when Live Nation really just took over the whole game, and they pretty much bought all the venues. They became the buyers. They cut out the middleman. So, it was harder for younger promoters, up and coming tastemakers to book these artists. And then, but yeah, man, to your point, I always got to tip my hat to Electric Circus and Shabazz for what she was doing out in New York. You know what I mean? When we moved up here, she was killing it, and we did some stuff together. So, she was the equivalent of what we were doing, in Ohio, or, I spent some time in Chicago. So, yeah, I got to tip my hat to that because, I think New York misses her presence for sure. Just Electric Circus as a whole. There's really no strings carrying it right now. We kind of fell back ourselves, so it's really no strings. And then, you got different brands. The brands kind of killed shit too, to be honest. Like, they came in and started like overpaying and, squeezing out the little guys too. And then now you're left with, we call them guys with dads.
Yeah. Guys
with dads?
It's
guys
so funny.
Dads.
I said that. Can I interject real quick? Because it's a really good article that I read this week from The Guardian that literally is about that concept. It's about in London how there's a whole new scene where it's like a bunch of rich guys whose dads are literally billionaires.
Exactly.
And people are complaining, it's like, okay, used to be DIY scene stuff. And now it's these billionaire kids who can afford to pay these DJs a lot of money. And then someone else who would have promoted or would have really booked them can't.
Yep.
And I feel like no one's honest about that. Like, I think people really don't admit that there probably could have been like, there's probably kids who which want to be in your footsteps, but it's just kind of this whole new ecosystem that's kind of gobbling that up.
Yeah. For sure. Guys with dads.
I'd love to know if there's a rich kid that ever
He told me that story too.
Has there ever been a rich kid that created culture?
I mean, now I believe, because I think that
I didn't
that's
mean
part
finance.
Of it too.
I meant create culture.
I mean, art, fashion.
I was gonna say, I would imagine so. I wouldn't just throw the whole concept.
I find it hard to imagine that a rich kid ever created culture without adopting something from somebody else who's actually struggling.
You are a hater.
Ooh.
God damn. You don't think a rich kid can create no culture?
No,
I'm not
but
saying
the
they
full thing, what he said, adopting it.
adopt.
Oh,
yeah.
But I think we all adopt to a degree anyway.
Yeah. But there's something in a struggle, right? Like usually culture comes from the means of struggle. Like not even talking about the art form, but limitation is the mother of all invention of art, or artistry. I'm just saying, like, anyways, not to go into this shit. But,
I hear you.
It's a podcast.
yeah.
Go into the shit. Yeah.
No, but it's just interesting because I didn't hear about this.
No, it's definitely
Kids
guys with dads that came
dads,
in.
guys with dads or whatever
guys with
thing,
dads
which
came
is
in.
So
really funny.
Yes.
Yeah.
They came, got the positions, and then trapped it out.
yeah.
But usually you hear about it on the business side. You don't hear it on. Like I usually hear it on the business side. Like
Shit, that's what. Well, I was gonna say, break down what you mean though, because I think something we talked about was that we want to make sure the audience gets that type of stuff. When you say that like brands came in and squeezed out the little man, break down kind of the business of being a concert promoter, producer, like event producer, and what you like. I know what you're talking about, but explain what you mean when you say they kind of squeeze people out and what that look like.
I mean, where do I start, man? I think from the concert, when you think about concerts, as it pertains to Live Nation and different buyers in the market, one, buying just got way too expensive for the little guys, and you would have to have almost some protection from a venue to even make sure you cover your X's and O's.
Mm-hmm.
But if you think about what it costs to put on an event or to book talent, for the most part, you need a substantial amount of capital to do it at a certain level. But then when you have brands come in, like you think about even South by Southwest, right? Like that used to be the DIY or DIY, platform, and then brands got a hold of that, and now it's almost impossible to get out there and do some indie.
Meaning like an artist can get 10 grand from you or 30 grand from Sprite, correct?
Yeah, but
like
they're not getting 10 grand from me.
Yeah.
But I mean, you think about the South by Southwest showcase we did 2015, which really elevated us. I didn't pay for a single artist, and I had Uzi, Chance, Post, OG Maco, Key, all the hot underground artists at the time played our stage just off the strength of relationships and opportunity. And then I think even that next year, as we tried to go back down there, it was over with. People were playing the Sprite showcase or the Doritos showcase, the whatever. I won't mention some of these other brands.
It's all good. Yeah.
But people come from different circumstances, man. So this whole concept with of guys with dads. What I've witnessed in the space, again, a lot of curators and tastemakers that I felt like really, fed the space. I think one, they've either aged out or they just got tired of competing with, the brands and just, how ruthless the market can be.
Yeah.
I guess my question to you, any of us, what do you think, have you had opportunities to, and I know you have, be on the inside, partner with these brands? And then also, when you have, what is your experience? Because I know I could talk about mine, but I want to hear about what it was like for you.
I mean, funny enough, Animal House started as an entertainment company, right? And I always wanted it to be a label. And we moved here and we actually got into the music business and we're closer to being a label. But my initial frustration in Ohio was that it was just that. Live Nation was squeezing us out. We needed more capital. No brand didn't care about coming to Ohio. I make calls. It's cold calls. So I moved here to be closer to the brands and start having those conversations in person. Yeah. Say all that to say, I'm not gonna say we haven't had any partnerships. We haven't had any substantial long-term sponsorships, partnerships, etc. We've done some stuff for Live Nation. Those are the homies from not Live Nation. I'm sorry, Live Mixtapes. Those are the homies from Cleveland. We've done some stuff with Audio Mac, 10 Deep, which I actually was working at. So my experience in the sponsorship partnership space. Even from what I, from the outside looking in, even if I'm just not talking about myself, I just feel like it's hard for black males to get those partners, to be honest. That's from what I see and what I've experienced myself. So I can't really speak on those partnerships and stuff like that, man, because, we pitch. I don't know if it's because we work primarily in hip hop. I think that has a little bit to do with it. But then you see the white guys with dads come in and do the hip hop events
sure.
with partners and
Hell yeah.
you know what I'm
Verizon
saying?
or whoever.
Yeah, man. And then
whoever
you know, it's even crazier because you know you see people get in positions that you might know.
Mm-hmm.
You feel like they might lend a hand, and then you hit them up, and it's slow too. So, so yeah, man. You know, I've been putting up my own bread for almost 10 years. Every event you've seen us do, it's always been my own money, bro. So, you know, I just was like, all right, man, it's not the juice ain't worth the squeeze anymore. So, but yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
No, that's the honest. I mean, that's the point. Like that's why I asked it. Is like, are these brands seeing your value and you work with them a lot, or has it been a struggle? And I think,
so
like, I mean,
what I will say is that most brands, especially now, they're going to look at your Instagram numbers. They want to see impressions and all of that stuff. Nobody on my team, we're not internet guys. Like, we all work outside. People know us for our true relationships in the culture. So, you know, our platforms, we produce good content. All our marketing is strong. But as far as like really keeping up a channel to get the numbers and the data and all that stuff, like that's not really our lane. So when we do pitch and they see, oh, you guys got 2,000 followers, I already know the conversation's already kind of getting a little, you know what I'm saying, a little bit slower than somebody that's, oh, we got 20,000, people are engaged, we put out content every day. So I think that's also a hurdle that I can, you know, just be honest about. But nonetheless, man, you've been here, bro. We've been shutting down New York for a long time, and I think, you know, it's not tough. It's not hard to look us up or to ask someone who's third shift in Animal House, and you know, is it worth the partnership?
Yeah, and I wanna make that clear to like the audience too, because I feel like it's so many movements. You know, me and Issa had this conversation not too long ago because she was talking about a streaming platform that she was interviewing at to basically run their events. And to me, and to you, and to probably to everybody to say, it made perfect sense. It was like what she is in culture, and Henry, what No Strings is in culture, what that platform is a perfect marriage. That is who you should want. And she got passed up on. And we were kind of talking about that. And then broader, there's Matt Wynn in Dallas. You know what I'm saying? That's got a brand called I might be fucking it up. It's Iris, I believe, IRAS out in Dallas. Mace and Lonnie Sounds, who do nights like this in Houston. City James and Wasil and Viva and Kasadi in LA with Basewood. And there's so many crews like what you're talking about. And the thing that I want to make sure that like the audience gets is that like we got to kind of push back on the kids with dads when they get the position and they call us and look at our Instagrams for the sauce. Because even though you got the 2,000 followers, those are the same motherfuckers that call you to figure out everything. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, it's almost like ghost producing or like ghost promoting where the kid with the dad goes and gets the $100,000 bag from Sprite, but doesn't know what the fuck to do. And then calls a Jordi and a Will, or calls a Issa and a Henry, or calls a Wasil and Viva and City and Kazadi or whoever, and pays them like the little bag, and then continues to grow this brand, and it starts to kind of like it taints the whole thing of culture. And I feel like that's why we're in this position now where Live Nation, AEG, every DSP in the world is hunting and hoping to find these like micro communities now, because they trapped it all out and the kids with dads never revealed that they were going and getting the sauce from all these pocket micro communities that knew how to get. You know, I mean, we don't talk about it enough, but y'all, I would say y'all broke God's plan. People don't talk about it. That's Drake's biggest record. I know for a fact that happened. I know it was the New Year's party. Trippy was involved in that at the time. And they broke Drake's biggest record. You know what I'm saying? That's not talked about enough, to the point that motherfuckers was looking at getting plaques. You know what I'm saying? For making it a moment, because it really mattered at that party at that time in New York for New Year's. Like, you had to do that. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, why would a label not look at that and say, you guys should be our head of marketing? Here goes. And that's what they do with the kids with dads. Y'all keep third shift. Y'all keep Animal House. That's y'all shit. Y'all come on board. We'll give you a salary and we'll fund that over there. And you can take it and move it wherever you want to move it at. Yeah. And the business isn't discussed enough.
No, I mean, to be fair, you know, we do some consulting for labels in that space. But, you know, the labels look at it black and white. They want you to come in and turn water to wine. And that's just not how it works. You know what I mean? We actually have great taste, and we're able to point out those moments and those artists that, are prime for a moment. You can't make a moment out of nothing. You know what I'm saying? So, but yeah, man, that's, we can go all day about
No,
that.
but I asked that question because,
Yeah.
like, literally, that's how I got brought to New York, right?
Yeah.
Like, my first job in New York was because I was working at one of these brands. And one of my wake-up calls was seeing that inside artists that we would consider mainstream artists of someone in, like, 2016 and 17, no one in-house knew.
Yep.
But at the time, I was bringing for a brand that was literally the main sponsor for Made in America Festival.
Yep.
But the thing is, they were outsourcing culture for a Cornerstone. Like, that was our agency partner, And
I remember Cornerstone.
Right. And like Shabazz used to work for Cornerstone, and that's the thing that I've kind of always learned is like, I think there's some people who can build their own company like what you're doing. And I always say also, I think there's another group of people who I think should try to go through the verticals of working for a Cornerstone. Like, I didn't work at Cornerstone, but I worked at an agency called Walton Isaacson. And I did experiential marketing and working on things like Essence Festival and Flavor Battle and all the stuff that McDonald's did. And it's kind of like, that's how I was able to kind of come into the scene, just because the artists that I worked with through the blog era went from, DIY scene, frat parties to like Barclays Center. But at the same time, I had to decide, do I want to thug it out with you all? Or do I want to try to build my own career?
Yep.
And I think it's like, I just wanted to like say like, kind of like acknowledging the different paths
For sure.
people can do if they don't come with like, money from dad.
Yep.
Because there are a few seats and there are some companies, like it's like Translation, it's Cornerstone, Walton Isaacson, that do see the value of people like us and don't overstay your time there, know how to shift and move. But I think when we do see something interesting happen, it's because it's one of us in these buildings. Like a lot of people that you came up with, we were just talking about before like the camera went on, are the reason why Topicals is like the leading beauty brand. It's the reason why Coach like has like had a huge comeback. So it's like, it's easy to be like, I wish this happened and this is not happening. But at the same time, we do have peers at BC who are making big plays. But it's that things like you got to put your own table and get slighted a lot. But or you kind of play the game a little bit and you might like, okay, let me go to a major label. Let me go to an agency. Let me try that stuff.
Mike, you said, oh, my bad.
No, I was just going to chime in because I think you're right. But I would say, I think me and Donny kind of shared it, the entrepreneurial spirit. Like just really, we always, I think Dame is probably one of our heroes, right? Like
Goes to Dame Dash.
We both fans of Dame. And I think, I do, well, I ain't gonna say not as much anymore, but just coming up, I always had a little chip on my shoulder. Probably for the same reason you did, right? Coming from a smaller market, being overlooked, it just put a little bit more of a battery in my back to just be like, yo, I got to build this shit myself, So, we get in where we fit in as far as finding spaces that, we can, collaborate with different companies or do a contract role or something like that. But, I'm 100% on the entrepreneurship path though. So
for sure. Mike, you sit at a crazy intersection. And I talked about this, well, technically the episode's gonna come out after this one. It was the one that we did with Jacob Blue and me and Sabrina. But I was like, yo, I just stepped into this GM role over the last 3 months, which is some shit I never thought I would do. But it being with Key and just some of the places that there were synergy at, it made sense. So now I'm at this point where I was talking about it on that podcast episode where I was like, I'm becoming like a suit. Like I'm starting to understand Lior more, which is crazy to me. Like just me saying that feel crazy. But you sit in that position as VP at Rostrum and then as a VP at SoundCloud. When you hear this conversation and you think about just those partnerships and the conversations that happen in boardrooms and culture, and obviously you were more focused on economics to some extent, but you still sit as a decision maker and being able to help spot culture. What are your thoughts on how bigger brands and companies that can finance culture should do outreach and reverse? Like how can companies that really have cultural value that may not be quantifiable communicate that in ways that make sense to people who sit in your position?
I can't remember what episode we talked about, but you were talking about the type of manager you have to be for an artist in the first conversation you have, you were like, what's your goal? Remember you said that? It's like, do you want the artistry? I forget how you worded it, but it was like, do you want to go the route of big and...
Yeah. Do you want to be famous, or do you want to like...
Yeah. What was
like
it?
have basically have money?
Yeah,
Like, do you want a career? Like a doctor's salary?
So I think what you're all talking about is almost a form of graduation, right? But it's almost, you're graduating to Walmart. You know,
Got it. Yeah,
you went from the local mom and pop shop, you're at the local record shop, you're a darling, and then you graduate at some point into Walmart, which is maybe desirable, but you lose something along the way. And then, you know, other companies, labels, platforms, some of them have made that misstep where they already did that, right? They either as a company or some of their acts or their nest eggs graduated into this kind of stratosphere that you can't walk that back. You lose like credibility, or you lose whatever it is, right? But sometimes if they're big enough, there's enough already happening within it, they can kind of save themselves and find that next, like you were saying, mining it to find the other thing that's happening. I guess that other term when you guys were talking about guys with dads is like that, I don't know, that phrase I said, adoption, right? People are adopting something or trying to like take it.
Yeah.
And either give it a platform or trying to actually, what's the right word? But like force themselves into it. You know what I mean? Giving something a platform is different. You know, if a guy with a dad and give something a platform, okay, here's your credit for that. But you just gave something that, or someone, the platform they needed to have the stage. And if they want to keep graduating, eventually ending up in a Walmart, then so be it. But that goes back to the manager. That goes back to the vision, what you're doing, how you taste making it, how you curating it. But to take it to those specific examples, really interesting watching, to be in a holistic position where you see the business and you see how decisions are made at C-suites, and you're either on the fringe of them or you're in those rooms or boardrooms. It all comes down from a financial incentive all the way down. And then there's a point where someone somewhere has to go, oh, fuck. We have to choose between culture and money. And you're trying to marry the two.
Yeah.
It's really hard to do that.
Rohit said something.
Well,
I taught him last week. Rohit's the former chief product officer of SoundCloud, now the CEO of Weather Channel, which is like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
But he's the CEO of Weather Channel. We were talking last week, and he said something that I was like, I wrote it down because I was just like, fuck, bro. We were talking about product and we were talking about monetizing anything, you know, Third Shift, Sharks in the Water, Animal House, Clubhouse, Pope Baby, you know, Blurred Lines, whatever. We were talking about how to monetize things. And we were talking about a specific company. And he said, well, you know, what we had to do is we had to make a thing. And to make a thing, it requires culture. If you don't got a culture, you can't make a thing. So everything that has never made something, when you look at this company, that company, and they went out of business, it's usually because they didn't have culture.
Yep.
So he said the shit, and I was like, damn, it does take culture to make anything. And then he said, that company doesn't have a culture. That's why they never made shit. What they made was by accident. So for the last however many years, all they've been trying to do is find culture to even figure out how to make things. So I'm saying that to say, kind of what you're talking about. It's like at the C-suite, you got finance and then you got culture, and you're trying to figure out, how do I make money off of culture? Because sometimes cool is too cool and that shit doesn't make money. But then talking to Rohit, and when I was listening to him, I was like, oh shit, you can't even make a product without culture. Apple's the biggest company in the world. This nigga Steve Jobs was the most cultural white motherfucker in the world to be like, well, I'm gonna go do acid in India and fuck with the Beatles and hang out with Jimmy Iovine, and you know what I'm saying? So,
but it's as simple as saying it's human behavior, right? Like it's like Rohit, for example, he was obsessed with human behavior as a product.
You want to bleep his name out when you say this?
Huh?
You want to bleep his name out when you say this?
No.
Oh, okay, tight.
No. Like
I'm gonna use this on LinkedIn.
That's fine.
This. Yeah, okay, go ahead. No, keep going.
Fuck, do I care?
Yeah, that's the Casamigos. Now you see why I had to drink.
Shut up.
Go ahead. I'm fucking around.
No, but
is.
as a product leader, he understood that it's human behavior. You have to tap into that to figure out what's going on, what
Right.
people want, what people do, and then the second layer of it is okay. There's a culture behind it, right? Because human behavior, whatever it is, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
like, especially in music tech, like you can't build shit without first understanding culture and the SoundClouds and others, right? Like they got lucky. Like the most successful companies in music,
I cannot wait to have a lie on. Go ahead.
culture happened to them.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Exactly. Yes.
It's not.
Yes,
it's
that's
not,
what I'm trying to get at.
The
Yeah.
two founders of SoundCloud didn't shit out culture.
Right.
There were two guys that were DJs obsessed with electronic music that were like, "Oh my god, this sucks. I need to be able to host my mixes and share them in music." That was the impulse.
And the culture.
But that was them as members of that culture that had a very personal problem to their human behavior that said, I need this simple thing. They created it, they put it out there, and eventually in a short period of time, it just blew the fuck up because other people understood that simple value, right? Now, music tech is like, just to bring up what you're talking about, voice AI technology, everyone was scared shitless of it 12 months ago. Over time, they're getting used to it and being like, wait, I don't understand. How can I use this if I'm not scared shitless of it? But the only reason that our company has become successful is because me and the other people, the other co-founders, and the one thing that I was telling everybody, you have to play the long game. It's like making music, building a career, artists, developing anything, developing your company to do live, right? Like you play the long game. There's no other game than long game, especially if you want to retain. If you do graduate to a Walmart, the only way you retain any credibility is because you always play the long game. And one of the things that we recently came up with, we realized, and we were involved in like the World's Intellectual Property Office in Geneva, and there's this whole discussion with, blah, 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 and not that I'm not undermining it, but it was,
I was gonna say, you gonna respect some of this.
it gets frou-frou, like your bag, like your bag from today.
For sure.
And without the dog. But what it was interesting is at one point there was feedback for the thing that we put out into this big forum. And like, oh, you're culturally driven, but just technologically applied.
What do you mean technologically applied?
It's the thing that's built, the platform, the voice platform. It's culturally driven. It's people being like, oh my God, I can go and sing voice notes into my iPhone, but because I have an AI voice model at home that I developed or online that I developed for my studio at home, I can just do this into my phone. And then I come home and I just swap it in my DAW, and then I have studio grade performance of what I just did.
Right.
That's culturally driven. That's a workflow.
Right.
But that's people building it to solve their own problems, right? So like going back to your thing about Rohit and all that, that's a platform about people consuming shit. That's people listening to music, right? What do they listen to? Why do they? Where do they? How do they use it? Like that was very basic things that he came in, and to his credit, he turned the ship around on the product side because he kept asking very simple questions, but he was relentless with them to challenge the product and engineering people. And it's not rocket science, but at the same time, it takes effort to hold people back to that principle. What the hell are we building and why and for who? And then you start putting the whole textbook product stuff, textbook business, textbook blah, blah, blah. But it starts with needing to understand culture. And you're only tapping into it. You're not creating it.
Right.
That's the thing that people get wrong all the time with like music tech. It's like, well, the Web3 stuff that you were, leading the charge on and all that, like, that's really when it happens when people get in it and around it. And that's how platforms live or die,
Right.
And that's the thing that I think is terrifying to any investor, any other people, like rollout. Sorry. But like
I hate when y'all name drop that shit, bro.
No, but look,
Sabrina did that shit
dude,
last episode.
Yeah, I know. I just did it like I'm in her seat.
Started this
I'm in
podcast
her
with
seat,
not talk
man.
about that.
I'm in
Yeah,
her
go
seat.
ahead. Go ahead. Fuck with it.
I'm doing the
Yeah.
I'm doing the thing.
Yeah.
No, but it's artist managers, right?
Right.
As a basis at the beginning.
Right.
Will it evolve? Yes, it will.
Right.
Because other people are going to use it. They're going to say, well, I'm this, I'm that. This is how I operate. I'm an artist, but I'm a self-managing. That's the whole thing, though. It has to start from an impetus like that, which goes back to any form of art form. The only reason someone creates is because they have a need to do it. Right?
What do you feel like your need was?
Well, that's a bar.
Right.
Because I think the whole time you were talking, I was just thinking about like one of the reasons why third shift has been silent is because the need for what third shift was isn't necessarily there anymore. And even culturally, I think that need, well, there is a need for it, but the landscape has changed a lot, and tech has a lot to do with it too. So that's kind of where my head was going. But what was the last thing?
What's changed? What's changed?
Yeah, it's
Well,
gonna-
Let me get
No,
this
it's a
thought
great
out.
string.
Let me get this
Yeah,
thought out.
yeah.
What was the last thing?
Culture comes from a need.
yeah, from a need.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. The initial need
Like any
for
art form.
the initial need for Animal House was nobody cared about my hometown, my artists. The artists we had fire artists, Fly Union, P Black.
Yeah.
We had fire artists in my hometown. They never got looks. So it was simple to me. Book some talent, bring some eyes to our city, allow these opening acts to open up, create some content, get it out there.
Yeah.
Right. Obviously, there's a little bit more to that, but and that just evolved. We found ways to do that in other markets and essentially turn it into an artist development platform. But to your question, which was
You answered
What's-
it. You answered it.
What has changed?
Yeah.
And then also, let's not forget that fire ass article you sent around tastemakers.
yeah, but I think a lot has changed. That was just a different time in music, man. Blogs and tastemakers were kind of curating what's hot. Now we looking at algorithms and chasing data and streams, and it's just different. I mean, it's nothing's wrong with it. It's just different, So I think I've gotten older since I originally started doing what I was doing. So even my wants and quote unquote needs are a little bit different now. So I think we're just retooling. Trying to figure out what it is we want to push out there forward outside of the regular record label artist management stuff. But we still have a strong desire, and it's in our DNA to figure out how we can impact culture and use community to do so. So
It's interesting. I can't remember what you just said like 5-10 minutes ago, but I couldn't help thinking of. Oh, you said when the guy dad, whatever the hell.
Guys with dads.
Guys with dads. thank you.
Yeah.
The guys with dads, when they get to a position, they call the other people in culture the right people to
The
actually
real cool guys.
Yeah, the real cool
Yeah.
guys to mind them, right?
yeah.
So what's really interesting is I was just what I was thinking is it time maybe to just put a boundary there, like because I would imagine with what you just said, algorithms and all that, and that's how, say, youth culture ingests everything, right? They basically can't sleep, shit, or eat without it in their face. But what happens when people start to burn out from that, and then they start? I mean, it happens. Every day, right? There's a group of people that are turning around and saying, I need to find another way of
Yep.
finding and discovering this is not enough. This doesn't satiate, right?
Yep.
But what happens then at that point is those phone calls come up again. And it's like, is it time to also start to
Gatekeep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exact. Basically, that's
That was a topic that Sabrina, Jacob, and me went over. Go ahead.
Well, I think one, that burnout is happening.
yes.
I think it's slowly but surely happening, which, kind of gets my mind going, right? It's like, all right, how do we kind of insert ourselves in this space, right?
Yeah.
Gatekeeping, I think, is damn near impossible now. Like everything's been, democratized or decentralized or whatever. So
Yeah.
it's just really tough to gatekeep anything, man. And when it comes to just like talent or just people in general, man, they're going to jump at any opportunity. So if these guys with dads are offering somebody an opportunity,
Or the brands or
they
all the
might
other
not
options.
know that it might not be the best, but they don't care, So it's like, I remember, when artists would be like, yeah, that's not a really good look for me, or that bag ain't worth it, or you know what I'm saying?
It's like going commercial.
Yeah,
basically,
yeah. So it's like, but I think the guys with dads thing has been happening for so long over the last, what I would say, maybe let's say it's like 3 to 4 years. It's kind of just laid down a, almost like a faux soil now that we're kind of trying to grow from. So that needs to be uprooted a little bit, which is, I feel like, which is kind of happening. People are getting a little bit tired of what the algorithm is telling them to like and telling them to do. And, you know, even on the call last night, I was just like, where does culture even go from here? You know, we've kind of maximized a lot. You know, tech is driving in a little bit of innovation. But we've seen and done so many things when it comes to, like, you think about even artists, like what song is the artist going to make that's really going to blow you away? You know what I'm saying? Like, we've heard it all, you know, like what event are you going to go to that you can be like, oh my God, bro, I had time of my life. Like, you know, obviously there's a generation that hasn't experienced certain things. So, you know, I can't say that as an older guy, but you know what I mean? There's definitely just room for things to kind of just, you know, start to reinvent themselves.
Yeah.
I've been wrestling with that. Like,
which part?
fuck you. You know, I've been looking at game theory a lot. Like I've been studying game theory a lot and playing with game theory a lot, and just games and there's like a reset element to a lot of this that I don't think gets talked about. Nigga, this is in front, like we are. You ain't even try to make it sexy. Go ahead, pour away. I'm playing. What the fuck? I'm playing. There's a reset element to the game though that I think about now. Like I turned 32 in July, and I feel exactly the same way you feel. But then I also think about my pops. Right, my pops is 71 years old, so a lot of the shit that was like fire to him felt like a reset. Like when I would do it, you know what I'm saying? So I just realized now that it's like the lens that I look at the game through. It's like, man, I was a part of the blog era. Like that was my era. So that shit was magical to me. When I talk to a 21 or 22 year old, I realize that they don't have any prior context to what this was or what this wasn't. So I'm looking at it going like, oh, this is like the blog era. Like I've seen this shit before. So it doesn't do a lot for me. So you either, and in game theory, you basically have to go play a new game to get excitement. Yeah. And if you don't go play a new game to get excitement, then you just keep playing the same game over and over again because you know how to win it so much that you just get bored with the shit. And then some people get stuck in the game, and that's how you get motherfuckers that's been at labels for 35 fucking years.
That goes back to human nature and human behavior. But
yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. That's why I said that's what I'm struggling with now, because now I'm in a position somewhat where I can kind of do some cool things that can make impact. And all I can do is kind of like cross-reference it against like, okay, I think this is kind of what Animal House was to me when I was 19. Yeah. It don't feel like it to me because I know what it, like, you know what I'm saying? Like I know Jordi myself.
But see, that's the thing though.
Yeah,
I try to put myself in that same position, right? Where it's like, yo, I'm getting older, so things aren't going to look and feel the same. But even just like as a fan of culture and cool, I still am not seeing what even the kids are being, you know, outside of streaming. Like they all want to be YouTubers and streamers and shit, but it's like, what do y'all like? I don't know, bro.
And
like,
see, for me, like, I don't know, like, I think for me, I think like the culture is like two main things. That like it's obviously numerous things, but like there's two main things. Like live stream, but like it's the idea that there is like a party that's happening, and then you know somehow you're the cool person and you get invited, and it's like looks like the coolest party ever, and then there's everyone else in the universe that's like watching it from Twitch or looking at photos on Twitter and Instagram. Like, and that's the equivalent of when I was in college, it's like, at the time, party photographers was the big thing, right? And
what was?
Party photographers.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And I was living in like places like Chicago, where I'm originally from, or New Orleans, where I went to university. And I'm like looking at venues like CineSpace. And like, I'm looking at people like Stevie Aoki when he was like the coolest DJ in the world. And I was looking at, you know, Trevor McFreddy's when he wasn't a tech guru. He was just like a DJ, right? And models and all this type of stuff. Last night's party. And now I'm like, oh, okay, that's just Twitch now. And before it was like, okay, these are the three main venues. Now it's like, wait, these aren't even official venues anymore. This is like truly, it's like almost like 90s, like UK rave culture now. They're in Ghana and it's Amare and she's signed to Interscope and she's doing it. So to me, I think for me, it's kind of like I'm jaded from the perspective of like the average thing that people are hyping up, I roll my eyes at. But I think like cool stuff is happening because I see all like these cool events are happening, and then with this like kind of digital storytelling, people are doing the live streams with it. Or I'm seeing what once was like a content series on, YouTube or something for the last 3 years, and now they're expanding to having an event series. So like I'm going to a color showcase, and I'm seeing, one of my favorite artists that I came across from the pandemic, and I'm finally seeing him live in a concert like Knockdown Center. Or I'm seeing like this cool, Black House Radio, and like, a bunch of Black people dancing to like dance music and house music. And like, I was like, how do I get an invite to that? And then by the time they have an event, I'm like, this is lame, but at the same time,
right.
so it all thinks it's cool, So like, I think there is interesting things now. And what I think is interesting, because before, when I was in my 20s, it was like, oh, I want to go to this like Samsung event. I want to go to this Sprite event.
Yeah, she
but
sounded
now,
like something. Yeah.
But now, like, just like we're saying, if you built yourself, this is like DIY, scene grown, or okay, this artist is like maybe signed to a major, but this is not an album listening event. Like the people in that room who fill in that, I could tell those people do not work at the label or even DSPs. Like I could tell based on what they're wearing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like people work at labels don't dress like that. So like I think it's interesting, except I feel like it's not cookie cutter. It's not like this happens once a month and let me follow their Instagram account and let me get a push notification. It's like a little bit more hidden, which means it's like, oh, I don't know what to do, but it exists. And to me, that's what real culture is,
It's a little bit of guerrilla style.
But that's interesting what you mentioned, though, is you're talking about both communing digitally and communing physically. Like the party photographer thing was all about being seen, right? And then being seen digitally online somewhere, right? Like that's the thing that hopefully that keeps happening. But it's that interesting mix, though. Like that, those two things in combination make it special. If you only have one, it never really, in this day and age, doesn't really have the oomph.
You have to tell the story. It can't be hidden. Yeah.
That goes back to what I'm saying about, and maybe I'm articulating it bad because I haven't figured it out, even how I see it. But I guess what I'm saying is I look at culture more like a resource now. You get what I mean?
A resource?
Like water. You get what I'm saying?
The well that you dip into.
Yes, like a well that you dip into, but it's also just kind of like when we were young, culture was like, if I stay with the water analogy, it's like when you first discover water, you're like, oh shit, it's a stream, like it's a river. You're like, oh shit, you hop in it, y'all play in it, y'all swim, go down the stream, go up the stream, canoe, the whole shit. But then you find out like you can boil this shit and then cook with it. And then you're like, oh shit. Like at 30, I'm like, oh shit. Or at 25, I'm like, oh shit, niggas can take that with culture and do that. And then you got like Kendrick doing a stadium tour. I mean, Q was just talking about this shit. Like, this nigga did Tabernacle. Like, Kendrick is actually from the blog era. This nigga's doing a stadium tour, actually. He did the Super Bowl, actually. So then I look at that and it's like, oh, finding out you can wash with water. Water is water. You know what I'm saying? You could take this shit, you could put it in a bottle, you could sell it to a motherfucker that never had it and call it alkaline and somebody will pay $7 for it. Or you could go get this shit from free out of the Amazon and it might be the purest shit in the world. So culture really don't give a fuck what we do with it. Because you could go to Savannah and Savannah's got, Savannah has like an old school car culture. You'll go to different cities and people say, oh, Ohio has a soccer culture. Then you go, oh, well, why does it have that culture? Or Ukraine, we got a Ukrainian development team. This is a fire example. Ukrainian development team. I was like, yo, why do so many development teams come out of Ukraine? They're like, man, one dude got a contract with IBM as an outsourced developer. And that one motherfucker took that bag and just start hiring so many motherfuckers in the Ukraine that they built a school around that shit. And then that became kind of like the big company in our area. So everybody in Ukraine just learned how to code. It's like niggas from Chicago probably learned how to play basketball. It's like, bro, Jordan was here, so
that's the anointing event that then had a need.
But that's the motherfucker that finds the spring is what I'm saying.
Yes.
The water is the water. That shit was there. Jordan comes, and then every motherfucker wants to dribble dunk. You know what I'm saying? Wear longer basketball shorts. Iverson comes, and now every basketball player can get... Like, culture is just kind of this thing that you kind of like take the top off, and then it flows. And everybody else got a different perspective. Jordi got taste, so Jordi's like, okay, cool, this is what I'm going to do with the stream. This some fly shit to do with the stream. Then you got to get the kids with dads who are like, oh, put a dam there. I'm gonna bottle this shit up. Dasani. Put some chlorine
Show
in
to
that
everybody.
shit. Yeah, like it's just like the water's still the water. The water didn't change.
Yeah.
Then you got motherfuckers in Africa who are walking a mile for this shit and putting it in a bucket and then going home and washing with the shit, boiling it, cleaning their clothes with it, doing all the same shit. The culture. But Africa took the culture and did this with it. Ohio took the culture and did this with it. So now I'm at this point where I'm looking at so much shit that I'm like, damn, bro, it's actually so much culture just flowing so much that we look at it how we look at water almost. And so many motherfuckers have taken the $1 billion, the guys with dads have done so much to kind of do one thing with it that when you get like a Henry and Issa and you go and you see, you're like, damn, it's like fucking 200 kids in here all dressed the same, all into the same shit. I don't even know where you find this shit at. They ain't got no big Instagram following. But she just might have found the water and introduced motherfuckers to like boiling it or like, you know, using it for cleaning sneakers or whatever. Like that was her choice to do with the resource.
Yeah.
You could do whatever you want with it. Some companies take this shit and make Dasani with it. Other motherfuckers take this shit and go make, you know, alkaline water with it. You know what I'm saying? And sell it and package it. And there's a group of people that like that. But the problem or the conundrum of it all is like, how do you make a living off of water?
I mean, I think one thing that I've seen a lot, like when it comes to the regional stuff, is like talking about product in tech, you have to help people reach their goals, right? So like one person I'm really grateful that I got to work with, Tuma Basa, and he's one of those people that I look up. Most of the people, they can be in a work environment and then change company culture and bring people in and bring partnerships that would not happen otherwise. And he's done everything from create Rap Caviar at Spotify. He worked at places like Revolt when they were really in their golden era. He currently works at YouTube, and one main like project he does is a thing called Avenues. And the thing is, if you look at YouTube, it's actually the #1 streaming platform, right? Like my mom will never touch Apple Music because like you have to download it and that's confusing, right? You know, like my parents don't use Spotify, but they know how to use YouTube. Right. And if you could talk to someone who's in Ukraine, you can talk to someone who's in Kenya, they all use YouTube. And talk to someone in Detroit, XYZ. And the thing is with Avenues, they are in Baltimore physically and having big events there. They're having events in Detroit. They're having events in Chicago. They're having in these major markets where a lot of artists are popping off and having these regional sounds and making them realize, okay, you uploading a video to YouTube is not the same as sending it to DSPs. In your eyes, you're like, my song's out now. But in reality, you didn't put out the song properly because if it is put out, that means you're using a TuneCore distro kit and you don't have to sign to a major label. Just work with a distributor and then you actually have it everywhere. It actually is out. Okay, these are the different tools that you should be using. Hey, don't have your gun in a, like legit, like have, like I've been in these events and like, hey, blur out your gun. Don't put your gun in the video because your fans are 17 and your video is going to be age gated. If you're going to have girls dancing and like people aren't telling young kids this stuff, you know what I mean? And people are, and like people who talk normal and explaining how these things work so these kids actually can scale. Because I think oftentimes in like these different markets, someone thinks they're the big dog on campus and they don't realize one state over, no one knows who they are. And they're like, okay, let's think outside this bubble. Let's how to make you actually someone that can get the attention at X, Y, and Z. Because great, you had that meeting with that person. You signed that development deals. It means something a lot in this market. But we want to make sure that you actually can do well so you can be on the same like level as, you know, the Keys, the 21 Savages, all these types of people. And I think a lot of times people aren't going to these markets and actually telling people how this business actually works, how to actually use these products. I'm rarely hearing those type of conversations happening.
So you were originally just speaking to like people who you said it helping people reach their goals and essentially problem solving. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, problem solving, but like really in the sense of like, this is what you're currently doing and understanding like, okay, these are the current results you're getting out of it, but kind of like that little bit of like reality that like back to water, splashing the water in their face a little bit and being like, because every day I'm looking at some kid who's like, my video's out right now. And you look in the back and we're like, the song's done on Spotify. Like, you know what I mean? It's just on TikTok and YouTube, you know, but in their eyes, the video's out right now because they posted 5 TikToks and uploaded a YouTube video. But like a lot of times, and they'll be like, well, my video has 50,000 plays. I'm like, well, that's ads, you know? And like realize kind of talking people through, like, I get it. To you, your video having 50,000 plays means something, but these people can tell us ads. So like, let's figure out how you get 20,000 that's real views, you know? Or, okay, you might not be on Spotify playlists, but these are a few DIY playlists that actually have cultural weight. Let's figure out how to get you on the cultural playlists that are not an editorial playlist, but people still respect. And I feel like I'm really in spaces where people are, you know, naming what's popular and what actually works. And then part 2, when I'm in these corporate spaces, I think there's not enough people connecting the dots of saying, okay, Don Wong and his Red Mic is the YouTube channel that is the new On the Radar, right? They might know On the Radar now, but they might not talk about Don Wong. Okay, let's mention Don Wong, because the hottest 5 songs that just came out of Atlanta and all these places, they're on his channel, you know? And I think like, I think we need to kind of cross the lane a little bit more, like say the names, but then also if you're in like the weeds, tell the young folks how the game actually works. Because they can't lap you just because they know how the game actually works. You know what I mean? Or you do the plug for them, you know? So that's kind of like, to me, like that's, I know we're talking about taste making, but I think it all goes back to like culture and business. And if you can't have young folks understand how the business actually works, it's a lot of people with their chests poked out without actually, you know, moving forward.
Yeah, I think we got like what, 10 more minutes left, Wolf? 10, 15, something like that. For sure. Sticking with my analogy, I'm on this because I'm working it out in real time as I'm talking to y'all, and I've been trying to figure it out because it's stressing me out. Like it's fucking me up. But it's like,
what in particular?
I don't want to say the formula because it shouldn't be a formula to it, but just like the understanding of it. Of culture, taste, and money. Like it's like a triangle. You get what I'm saying? Like everything you just talked about is kids discovering water or kids discovering culture, getting excited about the shit, and then people in different positions being like, oh, you don't even know that you can package that shit up and sell that shit wholesale at Walmart for $1 billion. And then there's another motherfucking like some region that's like, oh, we worship this shit. We treat it sacred. We love it. We don't let anybody fuck with it. We protect it. We never would sell it. We never would do anything with it. So culture is a resource. Taste, and I've been saying this a lot, taste is the act of saying no. Like when you see somebody with taste, they really just know how to say no to a lot of shit. Like when you meet somebody that can dress, that's like, oh, you know how to put the right shit on, or you know how to go to the right party. And then making money of it. Cool shit don't make a lot of money sometimes. Go ahead. But do you get what I'm saying though?
No,
like,
for sure. I think
because you see Pharrell do something, and then you see Theophilus London.
Oh, Theophilus London.
I mean, I think it always. You said something along the lines of like, it kind of goes back to the decision makers, right? Like who's going to. It's like each one teach one, right? Who's going to extend the olive branch for you to continue to grow this thing, this cultural thing that you've contributed. You know, I think about, you know, people like Joe Fresh Goods who was able to partner with New Balance, and look where he's taking it. You know what I'm saying? You ask him, he had no idea that partnership was going to grow into that, but they gave him a shot, you know? So it's like, you know, when I think about it, I always think about the people who are in positions to, you know, put other people essentially in position themselves. And then from there, you know, what are you doing with that shot? You know what I'm saying?
And I would say, I think it's both, looking at both ends. Because, like, I think as someone who, my whole thing since I moved to New York has been like, I want to be in the building. Like, now I'm in the space of like, okay, I built Blurring Lines in 2020. I'm trying to pivot that more and more and let it grow. But at the same time, I like to be in the building because I want to be able to see it all. You know what I mean? I think it's easy. Like, I complain less if I see it. Like, I'm venting, but it's not like, this is how it should be. It's just like me, like, you know, venting, you know? And I think the biggest thing that I see is when I'm inside the building is like, me talking to someone and saying, hey, this company, I might even work there, pays attention to 1, 2, 3. Okay, cool. That person doesn't do 1, 2, 3. It doesn't matter if the 3 things I'm recommending get a lot of views, impressions, it scales. They need someone to do 1, 2, 3.
Something specific, yeah.
You know,
for sure.
and then I'll talk to someone else who to me doesn't have the same amount of sauce. And I'll say, do 1, 2, 3, and they'll do it. And then my friend will work there like, oh my God, we love this person. And they're talking about them internally because they did the 3 things. And it's kind of like almost, I think I use the term ego a lot when I talk about creative spaces.
You say ego?
It's ego.
Yeah.
Because it's like, it's one of those things like, oh, well, I'm known in these spaces, so I don't have to do that. But I'm like, but they don't know who you are. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, I'm sorry. It's like, I've lived in a lot of different cities. What I did in Chicago did not translate to New Orleans. I had to start over. What I did in New Orleans didn't translate when I lived in Nashville. When I lived in Nashville, didn't translate to doing New York. When I go to New York, doesn't translate when I go to Germany. You know?
Why you did that?
Yeah.
I think there's different kinds of ego. It's like, personally speaking, just like my obsession with music and loving music is, I see it to everything that you're saying is really interesting, especially the ego part is in music. It's really 2 types of people that make music that do it for art and people that do it for sport. It's a little egregiously oversimplified, but like I get freaked the fuck out when I meet musicians who treat it like a sport, like about playing the best and like literally performing the best. But I don't care about that. Like what resonates with me is the art side. Art's tried as shit, but you guys know what I mean. And like, and it's interesting because like the ego, the sport music ego is more that like I'm seen, I'm known, I'm that. But then the art ego is so obsessed with the art that then the team around that just has to be like, I'm just going to put you here. Yeah. I'm going to put you here. And they're not even looking. They're just staring at their fucking art. Like, yeah. And that it's so interesting that you bring out the ego. Like we haven't talked about that, but that's that sports type ego. And I never heard about that by Ohio and soccer. That's new to me, by the way. That's
I think he was just.
Well, when I lived in Ohio, I grew up. I lived in Dayton.
Yeah,
but the reason I
we play soccer in Ohio. I grew up playing soccer.
Yeah. See, that was the first time I saw black people. We moved from Texas to Ohio. We moved to Dayton, Ohio, and I was just like, that was the first time I seen black kids. Like we was just going to play soccer. Like it wasn't basketball. We were playing soccer. And
that's why I'm gonna bring that into this is because like growing up as a Polish kid in this area of the States, like the city, New York, Jersey. That's how I learned a lot of bad words of stuff I was being called, and I didn't even understand what they were. Like the F word and there's other things, and there's I was like, I don't even know what the hell that means, little kid. And the kid ran off to his dad, and just like you could tell they're like football people, and they're like, yeah, we called him this thing, and I'm like, I go to my parents who are crazy immigrants, and I'm like, hey, they called me this thing. You know what that is? Like, we don't even know what those words are. And like, so for me growing up, like hearing what you just said about soccer, it's like, it blows my mind and I'm excited to hear more. But it's because I grew up playing it. It goes to the art of the game, not the sport of the game. So just applying it, not to music, like to that, right? Like my son's playing soccer and he got obsessed with it because he watched some Jap anime cartoon about soccer. And it's crazy. It's crazy. I watched it with him. And the focus, and the reason I bring this up, the focus of the whole series is ego. And it's this weird Squid Game thing about ego and curating these players. And the most egomaniacal ones, they get out. The ones that have really strong ego, but they cultivate the ego.
Yeah.
Are the ones that... It. Yeah. But it's a fascinating thing, just the sport, the art. And
well, I think just back to what I was trying to get at with your statement, as far as like kind of this problem you're trying to solve, right? I brought up, decision makers. I think it just takes the right decision makers to make those right decisions. And I think, to be fair, you might not always get it right. If I'm in that position, I don't know if I'm, picking the right young, cultural, creative to partner with. But, you know, sometimes we do see it happen, you know, really beautifully. I think more often than not, we see it go the wrong way, you know, where people think they kind of got their finger on the pulse. And there's a lot of ego in that. And there's a lot of ego in people who are making those decisions too.
For sure.
Because they're essentially tastemakers themselves, but they're also kind of answering to, you know, a boardroom.
Who have those goals. Like that's
so,
what it's kind of going back to. Yeah.
So it's just, it's really interesting.
But you're talking about a concept that we haven't said the word once yet, which is risk.
Yeah. That's
like,
fair too.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
The boardroom is calculating to not embrace risk.
Yep.
Right. Like I guess that's the thing at the top of this. With like when I was saying about culture is like usually it's the people that take the biggest risk or usually have, or on the opposite side that have very little to lose, that tend to shape and to create culture like that. So like it's
I guess that's what I'm saying about
to your triangle. You know,
the triangle or the square. Like,
but
like
what happens? But what happens when you don't have enough water?
Well, that's why I said I like water, because it's like it's more water on Earth than physical land. We're 70%.
Yeah, but a shitload of it's with salt. I can't drink that shit.
I feel like I'm like in that 70s show, and like we got to talk in real words for people who are listening, because I'm in the room and I'm confused, so I know the people who are listening aren't confused too.
No, I like that. I'm saying that it's like culture has existed and will always exist. Whether you were talking about Bob Dylan in Greenwich Village, whether you were talking about Boosie Collins and George Clinton and drug culture. Like that's a phrase, drug culture. Niggas was doing shrooms and psychedelics at one point. Then it was perks and Xans. And
great stuff.
Drug culture is drug culture. So it's just evolved. Exactly. So it's like a part of the conundrum is like, I don't even know if it's a risk. Because you look at a company like Apple. Apple is a culture company that figured out how to merge tech into culture. Steve said this. Like, this is a part of what Steve said. We take culture and science and we bring it together. Right? There's no fucking, that's the biggest company in the world. You look at Elon, whether you like Elon or not, Elon understands culture. Whatever side of culture he sits on culture. That's why he can be a $1 billion CEO, multi-billion dollar CEO, and then go do the things he does that pokes a hole here and then brings something out on the other end.
But he's a guy with a dad.
Don't get caught up in Elon.
Guys with dads.
He's a guy with dads.
To me, it's just elite. It's elite problem solving, bro. It's just
you said it's elite?
Elite problem solving.
Elite?
Elite.
Oh,
elite.
elite.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that's what a tastemaker is. And I guess my point is what I'm making is that you are a tastemaker to me. I've watched you over the years, whether it's in fashion, which you don't even necessarily monetize that taste, but you have a perspective on it. And you can be involved in it, and you can be at the intersection of it because you have taste. So taste is like the qualifier. And then culture is like this unlimited resource on what do you choose to do with it. You can be the CEO of a DSP and take culture and fuck it up. You can be a motherfucker from Ohio that saw it and bottled it up and was like, I'm not going to put any chlorine in this. I'm going to sell it as its purest thing. But you may not make as much money, or you may not be as supported, or the people who make those decisions don't support it. So if somebody in a VP position gets a chance to take $1 billion or $50 million and make decisions, and you say it's a risk, what I'm saying is like, and answer this, what is the risk if water is water? If culture is culture? You're just dictating how you choose to support it. But if I go to a third shift event, what the fuck is the risk? I'm going in the event, I'm looking around, I'm seeing a packed out venue, I'm seeing sold out tickets. If you go to No Strings and you see a No Strings event, or go to Houston and go to a Nights Like This event, or go to a Harley Home event, there is no risk. Actually, the people who have the best taste and understand culture the best probably have the least amount of risk to me. And I feel like Steve just understood that. And there's this little part that I'm trying to figure out about the monetization. Like, why doesn't everybody get this when I'm looking at it?
Yeah, but you're talking about Steve era. Steve era was closer to a monoculture than it is today. Like that's a different era.
I think Sam gets it. I think Sam Altman gets it.
He's trying to create
Sam
a
Altman, OpenAI CEO.
But he's trying to create a monoculture again of how to use his tech in that world. Like,
just his presence on Twitter.
I love that you brought up monoculture, man, because that's something that came up as I was just, I guess reading, or I don't know where I found it, but what has changed as to, what you asked me earlier. There's so many different lanes now to where, where people are digesting culture or where they're getting it from. And I think we kind of, even blog culture was a little bit mono for us. You know what I'm saying? It was really direct where you were kind of, digesting that music and finding tastemakers, et cetera. That
TRL
the community, all of it. It was it was real direct. Now it's just, like I said, it's being decentralized, so it's a little bit tougher.
Yeah, I think that's the risk, right? When you get behind, because like having taste should have gravity.
Okay.
Because it to your point, like whoever, us at this table, whoever like who has taste, usually people come to you or opportunities come to you. But usually in these positions, you end up, when you get a phone call or someone approaches you with those things, some of the time you're just like, yeah, here you go. This is what I think. This is what I'm looking at. This is what I'm seeing. This is what I'm hearing.
Mm-hmm.
And other times when it becomes a paid thing, if you do have real taste, you always, your shoulders go up. You're
Right.
like, there's something about it. May it be ego, mix of risk, because you don't know if you're just going to give it to someone or a portion of it and it goes into the void of all of the crazy stuff competing with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Which still goes back to what we've talked about, episodes ago is if we can make money in a direct way again, as opposed to competing for like market share and whatever share of everything that should never have anything to do with each other.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was still the biggest problem is like, Post record competing with a Taylor Swift record the day, because if they release it in the same day, they're literally competing for a share of a pie.
Right.
Like you have to, it's like, it's funny because movie studios had to talk to each other. Competitors like, hey, are you going to release that movie on that weekend? Oh,
Right.
you're going to do it that month? We're going to, and they had to actually like arrange that.
Right.
Now it's like that on a scale.
Which, when we had that argument or we had that conversation, I disagreed with that point, by the way.
Yeah.
Because I always felt like if you were in Best Buy, you were competing with whoever had the sign, whoever had the sign at the end of the aisle.
Yeah.
Whoever had the big label cutout of their album coming out. So
yeah, but that again, that's.
And that goes back to really quick, and then I'm gonna close this out with one question for everybody. But that just goes back to what I'm trying to say about just knowing what you decided. Like if you decide to just be culture, I almost feel like it's the opposite of monetization. Like the ultimate culture, especially in New York. I like saying this in New York. When I go to Chinatown, it's like, man, this shit is culture. You cannot put a McDonald's in Chinatown that doesn't have awareness of the space that it's in. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Nobody in Chinatown is necessarily trying to expand this shit out and become the biggest. They're not trying to take over New York necessarily. They want their slice of the pie, and they cool with their slice of the pie. When I think about a currency is probably the epitome of what I'm talking about as a musician, right? Like Currency is from New Orleans. He put out month-to-month mixtapes. He ain't really ever about to go try and do none of this goofy shit. He never really gonna feel like I gotta make a TikTok or I gotta do any of this shit because Currency's culture is weed smoking, lifestyle, old school car culture. And it's so him that he has an infinite amount of it that he will always make money.
That's him with his face down in his art.
Yes, but that's what I'm saying is I think the conversation that has to happen in the future is understanding that if you want to go be Jay-Z, you got to go make Big Pimpin', you got to go hang out with Timberland, you got to go do this.
Thank you.
If you cool with being Larry June or Currency, peace of mind is going to come to play, but you can't go buy you can buy a lot of shit, but you may not be able to buy certain things at certain times at the speed that other motherfuckers bought it
And you
at.
should be able to look in the mirror and accept which person you are.
And that's the water shit. I know it was woo-woo hippie shit, but for me, gold, when you talk about different countries, every country protects their resources. And the companies that don't protect the countries that don't protect their resources wind up getting pillaged and raped for their resources because they let everybody come in and fuck with the shit. And now you wind up going, oh, help us. It's like, no, nigga, you gave the resources up. You gave the culture away. So when we talk about guys with dads, it's like, why is the live space fucked up? Why are so many kids putting out music, but they can't sell no fucking tickets? Nigga, you outpriced everybody that was building culture. So this is the byproduct of draining all the water from this particular spring. So now the motherfuckers that had water over here that never sold water, and you trying to offer them $1 billion, and they like, nah, man, like, we knew y'all was gonna do that goofy shit. That's why we never sold our water, and that's why our people drinking. That's Currency to me. Currency ain't been broke this whole time, streaming there and not streaming. He just been in New Orleans buying cars. Like, okay, Dom been in LA. Dom Kennedy been in LA the whole time. Like, okay, streaming there, cool. I'm still Dom Kennedy. I still can go to 20 cities and do my old shit and everybody buy it and I can sell out Racket in New York or wherever because I made something so culturally relevant that I could just tour that shit once a year and go make 300 grand. And as long as I don't want to do $1 million shit, I got 300,000 or $1 million or whatever amount of money Don make. I'm not counting his pockets.
But I'm
It's
sure
there.
I'm sure there was decisions that were made that were those guardrails, whatever.
But that's
like-
taste. And that's what I'm saying.
That's
Taste is
business.
the-
That's business.
But that's yes.
No, but
Yeah,
Same.
yeah. I'm with you.
But
yeah,
the
I'm
boundary,
with
the
you.
saying
boundary
there's a
setting.
lot of people. I would say like you got to look to your left, you got to look to your right, right?
Yeah.
I literally lived in New Orleans, right?
Yeah.
There was other people at that same era were doing the same thing. You know,
Mhm.
I just had a meeting with
Nesby
like
Phipps,
Wiz
yeah.
a couple weeks ago, right? Wiz is good too,
Yeah.
right? But like, how did he do his business? How
Right.
did Currency do their business?
Right.
And other people in that same year in 2011,
Mm-hmm.
how did they do their business? You know what I mean? So they all were authentically cultured. They were all deep in it.
Yeah, yeah.
But at the same time, it's about who was in your corner and who was looking out for you.
Right. So, well, go
Real
ahead. No,
quick
go ahead.
Before we close,
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
off topic, but back to something you said about this discussion about sport and art, right? I agree with you, right? But something I always tell my homies and what we always talk about is like rap is a sport. So like you kind of need that sport, the competitive drive to succeed as a rapper, to me.
Is that
So I guess I would just put that out there to kind of
is it more of being aware of the sport and the competitiveness but focused on the art? Like it's almost being, to your point, because you're also saying being aware of the whole thing,
for sure.
but it's almost like being on both sides, but you know, depending on what type of, are you going to go the Jay-Z route or are you going to go the Currency route? Like those are, you're going to skew to one side more, but to your point, you still got to know there is a game that you have to play. And there's decisions, to your point, where you just said right now, right? Like those business decisions, right? Like how you're going to make your money and
And knowing when you're talking to people in business, you have to realize that I'm saying, I always go back to the same things. You have to walk into rooms and understand what their priorities are. And you also have to understand that what things that you might be your priorities, you're walking into a room and they might not know what any of these things are. And you're naming places and you're naming people and they never heard of these people. And frankly, trying to get them to understand doesn't often add more validity to it. So it's almost better to kind of realize, okay, coming in with your power and your network, but then also entering that space and saying they can leave the room and say, okay, they mess with me.
Yeah.
Because the thing is like, you can't make them respect and understand culture. You know what I mean? But to me, the easy part is for them to like understand that you can get their business goals.
To close us out.
So you got a question, right?
Yeah. And the answer could be that's not the case, but why do you feel more often than not, just answer the question and then the solution to it. Why do you feel like more often than not culture is overlooked in business? And then what do you feel like culture creators or tastemakers can do to streamline that conversation? I would love everybody to answer that. We can start with Melanie, actually, so we go all the way around. I'm gonna skip myself. and then
I
we
think
do
the
that.
biggest move culture is kind of I think a lot of people struggle from speaking from a perspective that other people understand, and they only speak from their own perspective. And I think that is part of what being a true tastemaker is being able to, you know, get someone. It's like why hip hop is like a global genre. It was someone from, you know, I don't know, someone in Brooklyn got people in Poland to care, right? And I think a lot of times, a lot of tastemakers really struggle with that storytelling. And I think that sometimes you can have business people that can help with that storytelling, but I think that's the biggest thing. People really, really struggle making people feel connected to this moment. It might be impactful, but I feel like a lot of people can't tell that story effectively.
And what do you think culture creators can do to advance the conversation or
I think
get us
it's
to a
like,
point?
I think it's studying people who scale. I think when I lived in Nashville, I moved to Nashville because it's a business city. And I remember seeing people in the scene hating on people that was like, that person sucks. But like, okay, but they just went from Nashville to opening up and doing a set at Lollapalooza. What did they do that you didn't have to do?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, who are they hanging around that you're not hanging around?
Mm-hmm.
And, I went from hanging around with both scenes and then, okay, I get what they did. And then I left Nashville and did things. And like, I have other people who are like, I'm cool with, but like they never made music their full-time job, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But they might be, and I think the biggest thing is like a lot of people are not studying the game. You know what I mean? I feel like it's like if you're in sports, I did sports growing up, like they're not watching the tapes, not just their own tapes. They're not watching other people's tapes. They're not talking to other coaches. I don't think they're actually studying the sport. And great. They feel cool. They feel, they're preaching to the choir, but I think a lot of people aren't studying the sport. And I think a lot of people have the potential to do great things that can change the world. But until you study the sport, unfortunately, it's not going to always happen.
Jordi? Biggest, why do you think culture is often overlooked in business? And then what can culture creators do to...
Well, I just thought about something before I answer that. I wish we would have chimed in on the example we brought up last night on the pre-call about those 4 panelists that kind of got some slack about being white in hip hop.
Oh, bro.
Right.
I text Wolf. We ain't talk about none of the topics.
Yeah.
This whole goddamn time, we just been talking.
Yeah. I wish we would have talked about that because my mind kind of went there just based on this conversation because I think about my peers in the space and just what it takes to do what those bloggers or those platforms are doing at a high level. Kind of goes back to the guys with that shit. But anyway, why does business overlook culture at times? Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of times it might not make sense for a certain company to partner with different tastemakers or pieces or parts of the culture. I think you need that marriage of how do we speak the same language, how do we accomplish each other's goals, and it also takes a little bit of just like openness to conversation. I think there's a level of problem solving to find that marriage, and I think a lot of times unless you got an in and somebody's like really a big fan of what you're doing or they immediately see a ton of value, then that conversation, they might just give you 30 seconds to make that pitch. You know what I'm saying? So there's an element on both sides where I think, people from the culture aren't typically the most eloquent at pitching their ideas. It's kind of just like the sauce is the sauce. You know what I'm saying? So there needs to be like, just that investment on both sides to kind of reach that middle ground and say, yo, we see the value. How do we effectively merge these worlds and speak the same language? What was the second part of the question?
What do you feel like culture creators or tastemakers can do to advance that, take themselves from 1 to 2?
Yeah, for sure. I think,
or more specific for you, how can a kid, and I definitely want to make sure we clip this up, Brian, how can a kid from a smaller market that's building culture in their city, in their market, take themselves from 1 to 2 or 0 to 1, or we'll say 1 to 2 from where they're at?
Yeah, I mean, I think just all the things that goes into executing it and creating a good product, right? Just doing things the right way, representing yourself well, good taste. But I think, you spoke to a lot of it too, right? It's like, just being attractive for the current times, like for us, right? Like I know if we were creating certain content or even like some of our storytelling, it'd probably be a different picture, but I guess just being intentional about, really truly wanting those things. Seeking out help or seeking out counsel, whatever it may be, man. Just, I always just go back to just being a problem solver that won't take no for an answer. That's always kind of been my outlook on anything.
I love that.
And, for me, I feel like the problem isn't always super hard to solve. It's like, yo, do you got the time and resources to execute on that? For us, we kind of, we got 5 or 6 different targets. How much do we really want to put into growing this one platform, and we're trying to grow this bigger part of our business. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or I can go. You want me to go so you can think?
I got it. You want to end?
No,
Yeah.
I don't care.
I think why sometimes culture is overlooked. So culturally driven businesses need culturally rich leaders.
Mm.
And I don't think the music industry has enough of them.
Mm.
Even if they start out that way and they get through the ranks of business because they came from the culture, they forget it along the way. Pressures, families, life happens. And I think some of them that I've been across throughout my career that I've seen that I could see they had that thing. Even in like new media tech, all the way to label, all the way to everything in between, you kind of see the pressure, they forego it, they let it go of it. So I think what could, cultural agents, creatives, artists do is fuck it, become one of those leaders as best as you can, or find them. Because like even you can't just wait to be found. You have to find the artist managers, the promoters, the people on the business side, and especially trusting the ones that actually have had a history with the actual creative side of culture. But it really is, I think that's the part that every broken or soon to be broken part of music is because it was the business or the economics or whatever was developed for a culturally driven business, but you can't apply things that work for shipping boxes for music. It just doesn't work. So I think, but that goes back to leadership. I think ultimately, and a lot of leaders that are those type of leaders that we all know, there's also the ego part that you mentioned actually really interestingly is them then self-preservation of not letting the next generation in. Or even if they're peers, there's an awkwardness there because you could probably work together and build something, but then the ego steps in and they rather shit their pants than find the means to have a win-win. Yeah.
Fuck.
You got it.
That was actually a fire answer.
Yeah, and he know it was a fire answer. That's why he patted me like that. That's why he dropped the mic and was like, "Go ahead and close this shit out with your weak ass half drunk statement."
No.
Fuck you.
No, you snap.
I love you.
I feel like
He's in his bag. Go ahead.
it takes a different type of endurance, bro,
Yeah.
to last.
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
want to really be a cultural leader, bro, you definitely get kind of wrung out on your way up and as you age, bro.
But that's
life happens, bro.
But that's the thing is when you
Yeah.
and I met and you started poking at me and I was poking at you, right? That's in some respects you were testing my endurance.
In the early days.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
for
actually,
sure.
that's a really good point. The
Yeah,
endurance
I think
thing.
that's the biggest thing for me. If I had to say why I feel like culture is overlooked, especially now in the position that I'm starting to sit in now,
Yeah.
is I think that culture at its most raw and undefined is the opposite of monetization. Like culture at its best is Dame. It's relentless, principled, no.
What is that in 2025?
Russ.
2025.
Shit, Russ. Niggas still doing stadiums.
Yeah, but he's been doing stadiums since 2000. I'm saying
I don't know how much room there is for that raw.
For no.
that was my question. Is what is in 2025?
Yeah, I don't know if there's that much room. I'm not saying there's any room.
No, I'm with you. And what I'm about to say is gonna be but it's still Ghazi to me too with Empire.
Okay.
I look at Shabuzi and Empire and Ghazi. No matter anything I may have on it, just when I look at it purely as what it is, it's man, Ghazi is really from the Bay, really set out to make sure that the Bay had a presence, really goes out his way to make sure the Empire is based in his city and does something. Whatever tactics and all the other shit, when I see it, I'm man, that is relentless, no. And that's taste to me, is just knowing what to say no to.
Even the model too, even their business model is someone who, we've done some partnerships there.
Yeah.
I really just respect what they allow the artists to do and the model, just as far as how they want to grow talent, bro. Like, I think that's a great example, actually.
Yeah. So that's what it looks like in 2025. I think culture creators often get overlooked in business because culture at its best is the opposite of business. What I think they can do better, and this is kind of cool that I just mentioned Ghazi because it goes to your point. Ghazi became the leader. Ghazi became the CEO of Empire and made that decision. So I think a lot of what culture creators and tastemakers can do, in my opinion, to take themselves to the next level, and this is kind of just piggybacking off what you said, but it's and a lot of what I've been saying to my team and like a lot of like younger artists is like start to look at business as a form of expression, like as an art form. Mm-hmm. And I think if you look at business as storytelling through numbers, then business becomes telling that story to executives or anybody in the world. Mm-hmm. If you can figure out how to storytell culture through numbers, almost at all times.
No. My favorite term is data storytelling, so I love it. So
yeah, exactly. Like, if you can figure out as a creative how to look at the numbers of what you do and tell some type of story in that. And I'll give one reference for kids to look at because a young nigga DM'd me. And when he DM'd me and he said he listened to the whole podcast, he asked me like 3 questions. And I was like, damn, I should give some articles or some stuff to Google. There's an article from when Dom Kennedy did his deal with Best Buy when he put out From the West Side with Love 2, I think it was. And the article was about, is it better to be an artist with a bigger audience and a lower conversion rate, or a smaller audience with a higher conversion rate? And I think it was a Forbes article. I'm pretty sure it was a Forbes article, and I'll try to find it. We'll try and put it in the link. But they used Dom Kennedy and they used Drake. They're like, Drake has like, and it wasn't streaming at that time, but whatever the metric was, they were like, Drake has 10 million followers or whatever the thing was, but probably converts like 1% on just like what he makes in the bank. Dom Kennedy probably has like maybe 1 million or 100,000 or 10,000, whatever's, but they converted like 80%. So on a business level, just on a business storytelling level, his business case study makes way more sense because it can scale quicker. Because if he gets to 20,000 and keeps 80%, 100,000 and keeps 80%, he has a higher conversion rate on his business. So to young culture creators, I would say figure out and learn and figure out how to study how to tell stories through numbers and spreadsheets and P&Ls and balance sheets. Because culture is your natural superpower. You don't even have to get better at it. I've known you for 10 years. You've never had to get better at being like a wavy cultural motherfucker and knowing what rooms. When it was lame and we walked in the room and you was like, hey, bro, you ready to go? It's like, yeah, we out in like 10 minutes. Like, we could assess the room and be like, oh yeah, fuck whatever brand was doing this and whoever told us to come. This shit is not it. So we out.
So a simple way to put it is figure out how to quantify your culture.
Yes. Figure out how to quantify your culture, and then from there make decisions on what you want to sell and what you don't. What do you want to leverage and what you don't want to leverage?
So there is a KPI on culture?
They're all, yeah, for sure. And I think Kendrick doing stadium tours around the world as an artist.
Amazon said yes.
Yeah, exactly. And Tim Henneshaw and
Amazon said yes because Tim knew how to do that.
Exactly.
And what did Tim do? He was inside the building and he built his own company and he was like, free lunch. And then he was like, okay,
we're going to do this.
I'll be that dot connector.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, with that said, we went way over time, but shout out to my man Wolf over there, fucking with the culture, holding us down, man. This was the Work Podcast. I'm Donny Slater. This is Mike Pelchinsky. That's Jordi Ross. That's Melanie. And we are out.